Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? You ready to buzz up and get high on nicotine?
Yeah, light me up, Ben. It's good to see you're on board. I like it.
Yeah, we should have taken a few lozenges before we started just to get this thing really buzzing along. But we got to stay sober and get through it because we got to talk about it seriously or something along those lines.
That's
so
right.
we've done episodes on caffeine before to effectively to death. Oh, well, maybe only 2 or 3, but still, we did a few of those just to get the effects of caffeine on your body. I don't know if we've actually covered this in an episode, but I know we've discussed this offline, what the difference is between that and nicotine and the effects of that, and we'll get to that in a minute. I just want to start this off by saying that with that offline discussion in the back of my mind and through a friend that shall remain nameless, of course, I tried in the last couple of weeks just some lozenges and some gum just to see what the actual effect was, because I remember you were saying that it has a, how would you put it, it's more effective at just giving you the buzz than what caffeine does, I guess. Yeah. And I remember when you said that to me ages ago that I was kind of curious to see what that actually meant. So I thought, well, I got the opportunity, might as well, do this for the listeners and all that sort of stuff.
Off-label experimentation, Ben. It's good.
That's right. Put myself on the line and, okay, now it's getting out of hand. But, but the thing that I found that was really amazing about it is that it felt like it was more targeted, at least the impact compared to having, say, a cup of coffee or something with caffeine in it. It felt like it activated my brain in a lot more direct way. It felt a lot cleaner, and it felt I just felt a lot super sharper, but without any of that jitteriness that you get from caffeine, that sort of nervous tension. And funny enough, once the effects started to wear off, I didn't, because usually after coffee and caffeine, I usually feel irritable, my body feels irritable for the rest of the day, whereas I didn't feel that at all after the lozenge. I might have felt like a come down, like in the sense of, you're not as, peppy without popping another one, obviously, but but I felt like it wasn't interfering so much. I didn't feel on edge or anything like that, and it didn't affect my sleep as well, interestingly enough, whereas a cup of coffee can affect my sleep even if I have it in the morning. So do you think that actually, I'm not sure if that's par for the course, but does that kind of line up with what you think or have seen or experienced with just nicotine on its own? We're not talking about smoking here, by the way. We're talking about effectively a nicotine replacement type therapy, I guess.
Well, I'll go so far to say as I don't think there's anything wrong with smoking, as long as you probably don't, smoke regularly. The interesting thing is that there's 2 pathways and calcium and or 2 cell receptors that would be sensitive to these sorts of stimulants, and caffeine and nicotine use different pathways, which is why I think people notice the different effect. But nicotine, works directly as a psychoactive, releasing noradrenaline and dopamine, and so it has a different pathway to caffeine. And the way it stimulates then is by actually changing a bit of our brain chemistry through the dopamine pathway. And there are all sorts of things that it's been shown to do that are potentially beneficial. I mean, there's even some evidence to suggest that smokers are relatively protected from diseases such as Parkinson and Alzheimer's.
But that's coming from the nicotine, obviously, not from anything else that's in a cigarette.
It's coming from the effects of nicotine.
Right, yeah. The effects on the body, in other words.
Yeah.
So
even though no one knows the mechanism of why that might be, they might just be dying before they suffer those symptoms.
So I guess the next sort of point of discussion there is this idea that I guess nicotine is associated, I guess most commonly with smoking, and specifically cigarettes. So there's like a link, I think, in most people's minds, and it was in mine as well, that that it has to be by definition unhealthy because you're probably the most I don't know, popular or well-known way that you would consume nicotine is through smoking. And it was
best way too.
I'm sure it'd give you the best hit, but like we were saying before we got on, you might be getting some other things along for the ride in that particular respect. But taking that aside, because I've been doing a bit of reading about it, is that maybe nicotine's getting potentially a bad rap by being associated with smoking as the delivery method for this, and that it isn't, not that we're medicos here or making any recommendations. It's just more is it as bad as what its reputation would suggest because of its association with products that can literally kill you?
Well, nicotine is it's a drug, and it's quite a dangerous drug. It's dangerous because it's addictive, and it's dangerous because it's toxic in high enough doses. I mean, caffeine's toxic too in high enough doses, so they're both, I guess, dangerous to that extent. So, then these sorts of drugs are always, well, they're neither good or bad. If you abuse them, you're up, you're running the risk of trouble. I mean, there are plenty of people who drink too many energy drinks who are very, very ill because of it, and hospitals see these people come in, and they're drinking, 6 large cans of some sort of energy drink every day, and it's, killing them, literally.
And it's a bit like there was and like just when you were mentioning about the caffeine and ingesting too much, there was a story recently that I saw on the news about a young guy that can't remember if it was a teaspoon or equivalent or a tablespoon that he'd taken, and it killed him. So, and that's kind of like what you were saying there, is that if you overdo it, that's where you run into problems.
Well, that's right. I mean, if you're eating a box of lozenges in a sitting, or anyone who is ever had too strong a dose of gum or a patch will tell you how sick you feel instantly from nicotine. So it's really easy to overdo it. But, used correctly, nicotine is also a physical performance enhancer. It actually relaxes muscles in a way that allows muscles to work really effectively, much more effectively, and to overcome stress, injury, and tension, which is wonderful. And at a cognitive sort of level, it sharpens the mind, and there's no doubt about that. So it was used actually, it was one of the first drugs used for doping, I guess, in the 50s and 60s at the Olympics. So, it definitely has enough evidence to show that it's good for these things. The question is how much, and as you've already pointed out, how should we consume it? Certainly at the moment, I know that nicotine is becoming very popular again by the nootropic people who love to have their racemates, piracemates, and now nicotine as well to sharpen their minds and be smarter than everyone else. So who are we to argue with that?
No, well, you're giving me all sorts of ideas now to get productive. I just want to touch on another aspect, which is, I guess, nicotine related in the sense of vaping, which has been making news recently as well. Is it actually a good replacement for people trying to quit smoking, for instance? And that potentially could be just as bad as smoking, depending on whatever study or whatever it is that you're looking at. I don't know. It's just. It seems like, inhaling stuff could potentially cause all sorts of issues depending on what it is you're inhaling and the frequency. I mean, it's like you were saying, like vaping's one thing, but like you use the example of a cigar versus a cigarette, that there's a complete difference there as well. But do you have any sort of thoughts on those particular things there?
Well, I mean, having nicotine if you've got a tumour that may or may not be smoking related isn't very good, because your nicotine will help grow that tumour by increasing blood flow to it. So there's a downside of nicotine. But, I don't really buy into a lot of the hysteria around smoking. I mean, in my lifetime, I've seen the average smoker go from 2 packs a day to now what's known as a social smoker, who might be smoking 1 pack a week. That's a huge difference. I don't know what the difference in health impact is. Obviously, it's better not to smoke, and I certainly am not a fan of cigarettes by any stretch of the imagination, but we're smoking a lot less of them. Cigars, well, they're dangerous too if all you do is chomp on cigars. But if you have 1 cigar a month or, a few times a year, I doubt that's really going to be a danger to you. And vaping, well, you see people with shisha, you vape, vaping's probably a little bit safer because it doesn't overheat the actual substance. It's vaporized by a hot element inside the device. So you don't have the dangers of the burns, as you inhale. However, if you're going to inhale something and then hold your breath and, overdo your vaping, it's probably not good for you either. But, there's so many things that aren't good for you. If you're stupid enough to do something that's not good for you, then ban one thing and you'll probably take up something else equally as silly.
Isn't that just a general thing, just to finish up on nicotine, vaping, cigarette smoking, cigars, whatever? Obviously, there are various things highlighted in terms of whatever's done, but I find in certain things, like vaping seems to be the latest thing where, studies come out as to it's good, it's not good, it's in the middle, and it's going through a cycle like that. And I just find that sort of thing problematic, and it sends like mixed messages to people.
Well, it's interesting you say this. So vaping in Australia, nicotine's banned from sale because it's a prohibited substance. So effectively, I don't know what you're vaping, a vaping fluid if you're vaping. However, you can import the nicotine yourself and mix it into your vape mix and get the nicotine. Look, I could go on all day extolling the virtues of nicotine, but the fact is if you're having a hit of it every 10 minutes, it ain't any good for you. You probably, if you're using it any more than once or twice a week, it's not very good for you. And it won't matter how you take it. It won't make it any better for you once you go past that. Because, of course, once you start using it frequently, it's an addictive drug. Okay, if you don't mind the addiction, that's fine, but your tolerance builds up and its efficacy of providing the effects really drops off. So it's a zero-sum game, So, chew it, smoke it, vape it, whatever you like. Just don't do it very often and you'll enjoy the maximum benefits.
Well, I think that's a nice point to finish up on, and I might, stick to a lozenge or two and leave it at that.
That's it. Whenever you've got a big morning at work, forget the coffee. Just chew some gum.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Takes less time too, and there's a lot less inconspicuous, I have to say.
Absolutely.
All righty, we might finish up there. So don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to our RSS feeds, Vimeo and YouTube channels, and we greatly greatly appreciate you visiting our website. And we hope you enjoy all the content there. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.